Moving on to the session for today, I am more than pleased to introduce our co-chair for TiE Women, Anastasia. Anastasia is an accomplished PR professional and business advisor who leads a Dubai-based communications consultancy, Sherpa Communications, with more than 13 years of expertise developing and executing all aspects of public relations and marketing campaign. She is heading, along with Shamima, the TiE Women program for the region. So even while the session is going on, if there are any queries, do reach out to us on chat. We are here to help you. She's a passionate public relations practitioner. She's actively involved in community groups in UAE, helping individuals and businesses master PR tools for their projects. She's involved in mentorship programs with TiE Dubai and many other communities, similar communities like In5, In5 Tech, Design. She's also an active business mentor and a charter member of TiE Dubai. Without further ado, Anastasia, I will let you share more details on the TiE Women program and introduce Manoj, who I hope will keep everyone think more than they should and question every decision that they make in their company. Thank you, Anastasia. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Cecily. Hello, everyone. Today is an exciting session for me as well, because it's going to be led, as Shamima mentioned, by Dr. Manoj Nakra. A bit briefly about TiE Women program. We ran this program for the second year from TiE Dubai, covering the whole region, Middle East and Africa. If you're a startup led or founded by female, if you have amazing female colleagues on board, do participate in this program and submit your nominations by the end of June. You can find the link on TiE Dubai website. Idea behind this program is to empower businesses, particularly led or founded by females. Today, aim to empower everyone who's passionate about their business idea. And what we're going to talk about today is about your business, the concept, and most importantly, when you go and pitch to investors, how to nail the pitch, how to talk about finances, how to ask money in the right way. All of this, Dr. Manoj is going to explain during 1.5 hour session today. Do drop him questions and he will address it at the end of the webinar as well. And moving on to the session for today, I'd like to introduce him more properly. Dr. Manoj is a serial entrepreneur, strategist, and advisor. He started his practice in the 90s, and he's co-founder of a Skip company, but also he's well known for supporting and advising entrepreneurs, businesses, startups. He is now busy creating an online startup ecosystem for incubation, acceleration, teaching, entrepreneurship, K-12 and college students on crowdfunding. He also sits on advisory boards of a few online platforms. And do check out his book, 100 Days Adventure, again, a book about entrepreneurship. He co-teaches executive education program at Indian Institute of Management, and he also supports TiE with very insightful masterclasses like today. So do connect with him and check his personal website. I personally subscribe because there are a lot of insightful articles there, so I do recommend you to do the same. It has practical tips, few links we shared in the newsletter, which was sent to you earlier this morning, so do check out those articles and many more on the platform. It's great to welcome you, Manoj, and over to you for the session.
Yeah. Thanks, Anastasia. Thanks, Cecily. Hi, everybody. Is my screen visible?
Yes. Yes, Manoj.
Yeah. So that's the most popular statement since the pandemic. So I was introduced as an entrepreneur. So in terms of an entrepreneur talking to other entrepreneurs, you must appreciate that I'm not somebody who's crossed the bridge and is saying, yeah, I've done it, and now I'm going to teach you how to cross the bridge. Because every startup that you do is actually a new journey, and the stress, strains, and the tension And again, the expectation of success is very much there. So I take this picture to show that that is me. And so take everything that I talk about with a pinch of salt. Question me. You want to stop me in between, please do that. Prefer it to be a little interactive. So for me, the classic experience of entrepreneurship consists of the fact that when we start with an idea, it all looks pretty straightforward. Nobody's thought of it before. And we could just get a little money either from your own pocket or friends, family, or somebody else. And you'll probably reach the end of the road very quickly, not realizing that the reality is that it's a series of ups and downs and a series of challenges that one has to overcome. Whether you're doing your first business or the 15th business, this doesn't change. It is very, very rare that what you think of and what you actually do and what you actually give to the customer are identical. I'm going to talk in this particular program slightly differently from normal. And I use the word normal because you could just Google and you could get 10 questions which you need to answer. And it kind of, the questions are all the same, whoever you get it from. So what the hell is trying to pitch your business all about when the questions are all the same? What I'm going to do is pretty different, because what happens is that when you get the 10 or 11, 12 questions, you actually get a series of jigsaw pieces which are all over the place, and you figure out what to do, and you are hoping as hell that they just fall into place. And once they fall into place, your expectation is that the investor or anybody evaluating your business is going to understand it the way you wanted it to present. And this is what I intend to do. I'm not interested in the 10 or 11 questions. My bigger interest is the second and the third image, which is how this whole thing fits together so that an investor sees it in his or her perspective. And it's very, very critical for an entrepreneur who's going out and showing their intentions of creating a business to the market, to the customer, to an employee or an investor. Do it in a manner in which it's understood in the perspective of the listener and not from the perspective of the entrepreneur. This issue will keep coming again. Even before we begin, we all need to have one very clear understanding that why do investors invest in early stage businesses? What are they really looking for? Anybody who wants to take a guess? I can keep it interactive, Cicely, Anastasia?
Absolutely. It will just have to be on chat.
Okay.
Or people can raise their hands.
Then I will talk because it will be too... okay, I have Nikita has raised her hand. Nikita, go ahead. You'll manage this, Cicely?
Yeah, I'm here. Nikita, okay. You can talk. Or she doesn't want to talk, maybe.
Yeah. So I have something in the chat.
If you want to interact and if you want to raise a question directly. Oh, she's in traffic. She's not able to speak.
Okay.
But she's mentioned on chat. I can assist you.
Yeah, I'm reading the chat for a change.
Okay.
I'll read it out so everybody will get it. So Nikita says they are generally looking for returns. Nidhi says encourage startups. Vijeta says, yeah, nothing. Investors invest because initial investment is usually less. A cool point. Idea and sustainability, the next unicorn, and stuff like that. So yeah, you're all right. The challenge is that they actually get hundreds of people coming and saying we know how to build something. But one thing which investors know extremely well, having been entrepreneurs predominantly or having been investors in a repeated manner, they have a very, very clear understanding that what is the value of a business today and what it will be tomorrow, and the journey of increasing value. And they also know that the journey is never as it is presented. It's going to be a journey with lots of ups and downs. And an entrepreneur, when they pitch, they can promise the moon, but they are not looking at that promise. They are essentially looking at the ability of an entrepreneur to create value over a period of time. Why? Because no entrepreneur should ever give a feeling to an investor that they know exactly what they are talking about. You have to be humble enough to say that these are things which I know and these are things which I don't know. But what I do know, that if I discover a problem, I have the capacity to solve the problem by learning how to fix it. And the humility to say this is a very key element of engagement with an investor. Because what is an investor doing? An investor knows that out of the 10,000 startups that start in a year, only 10 give 97% of the profits that an investor makes. And they know that it's only 1 in 30 that is going to be close to some sort of a winner, which will give them a return of what they put in. But it's really that exceptional entrepreneur who's going to give them 1,000 times their investment, which is going to cover everything. And this is called the power law. The power law is universally applicable in many situations, because if you look at as an entrepreneur and you say, this is the market that I'm after, you know that you're 100% of the market you're never going to get. And even if you sit and target a certain number of customers to approach, you will discover that only a small percentage of them will convert. And the idea that you have to focus your resources and get results is very well established in the minds of investors. So even if they wish to get a return, the way they approach you and want to listen to you is determined by this. I always say that investors are extremely good listeners and they see everything that you talk about. Why? Because investing is like fishing. Every pitch is a possibility of that 1,000 times return. They have no interest in ignoring any entrepreneur or any pitch. So that period of time when they're going to be listening to you is a very, very focused listening. Slightly different from the competition that you will enter, because this is a series of judges and they are not taking cash out of their pocket. So you'll just have to be aware that when I'm talking of an investor, it is a person who invests as a group or as a fund who takes ownership and therefore is expecting a return. So the 10 or the 11 questions that people talk about in the making of a pitch is what founders talk about. The business, the market size, the solution, the team, the projections, and whatever. But what the investor is listening to, that is there money to be made in this? Are these people who can make me money? And why is this important is, just to exemplify it, that if you are an entrepreneur who's created one business using external capital and gone ahead and exited that, and you come back and want to start a new business, investors seriously give very, very high value to that experience. Because what they are actually investing in then is a person who has understood the psychology of an external investor and has created value for them in the past. And all of a sudden that entrepreneur becomes exceptional. And yes, these entrepreneurs are a rarity in the market. So how is money made? Money is made through simple questions. How big is big for these entrepreneurs who are pitching to me? Do they really understand what it means to do customer acquisition? Do they understand the idea of a value of a business? Are they able to deploy capital which I will give them in a sensible manner? And is their past supporting this assessment? And I'm going to cover each of these in some length as to how they look at it. But these are very fundamental questions that are in the minds of an investor, even if they don't articulate it this way to you. They articulate it in the manner of those 10, 11 questions which you need to put in a pitch. Then the second question that they want to understand is that, does this entrepreneur or the team understand the metrics of what they want to do? Every business has a foundation of metrics. And do they understand what numbers mean to that? And these need not be financial, everything else. And therefore, if they find that the answer to the making of money, measurement is okay, then they believe that here is an entrepreneur and a team which will deliver them. Because they know for a fact that entrepreneurs will pivot, ideas will change, segments will change, and what they get at the end may be very, very different from what was conceptualized in a pitch. And importantly, I just added this from my own side. When I invest, and I used to invest at a time, I always added milestones to the dream, that big dream that the entrepreneur was pitching to me. Because very often execution happens quarter by quarter from an entrepreneur's side, month by month. The measurement of value happens every 24 months or so. But the execution and efficiency of capital utilization is a much shorter time frame of success milestones. And I'm going to give you some suggestion on how you may visualize your startup when you're presenting this to investors. This is my own crazy creation, so you're okay to ignore it or throw it out. But this is my mental model when I look at business. So you probably would have seen this, the business model canvas kind of stuff, which every MBA school or a startup school talks about. But this is a theoretical description of what is being done and is generally not good for anything other than incubation. I look upon a startup as consisting of 3 layers. The first piece is the customer engagement or the customer acquisition layer. The middle piece is what we do within the company to drive the business, grow the business, and also to manage the transactions. But below that is the deep data, which actually becomes the means of analysis to manage the growth of the business. And of the last 15 years, as data analytics and machine learning and AI has started to become virtually intrinsic to all platforms in some shape or form, the ability to use this core data to create a competitive advantage has started to become the third layer. Usually when you start a business, unless it's a machine learning and AI-based platform, data takes time to be acquired, and therefore we have to be sensitive to the fact that very often if I ask an entrepreneur to articulate what is their understanding of their deep data, unless they've come from a data background, they may not be articulated today. So that's not a problem, because we often say from a practical point of view, don't worry about data collection today. We'll figure it out. We'll start collecting when the traction reaches a certain level. So these broad 3 layers is what I look at. And what this does to the business is that customer engagement determines the speed of customer acquisition and their stickiness. This is the fundamental driver of value in a business. You know that there are businesses like WhatsApp, for the sake of argument, which had huge number of customers using it. They've not reduced in any shape or form, and it got valued at a very large amount during that acquisition, because people can discover how to monetize a customer even later. But you do it when you have the pockets of Facebook. Very challenging to do when you're a startup looking for external capital. But if you have stickiness and you know how to acquire customers, people will give you that value even when you start. And then we look at the unique drivers of the business, and I'm going to focus on this in a bit. And what do you do with data? Another critical point which all of us have to remember, that every business has to have a digital foundation today. There is no business which doesn't have a digital foundation. And a digital foundation is not the accounting system or the ERP that you get to run the business. It is how do you digitally manage the drivers of your business? And again, I'm going to cover that, but bear that in mind. Every business which you pitch has to have a digital underpinning. So then we come to, I did talk about giving an article which I wanted you to look at what is vision. But in most presentations that we come up with, vision is the most boring slide of a pitch. And the reason for that is that it's not coherent, and it's not the means by which we hang the presentation together. I'm going to explain this in a bit. So it ends up being a scenario that it's often very technical. So if we come up and use a statement that's a breakthrough innovation that significantly boosts your productivity using real-time decision metrics, nobody understands what you're talking about. We have to be very, very careful on how we want to manage it. Those of you who saw the video, the Harvard Business School startup school video, that 15 minutes, it's very interesting because it says that, can you make a vision statement which an 8-year-old child can understand? And I use that as my metric for understanding vision and mission statement. So this is Google. And to make search engines so powerful that they understand everything in the world. And the mission is to organize the world's information and universally accessible and useful. And the focus is on innovation and user experience. The challenge for us is that, can one use a template of this kind to do it? Let's also understand where Google came from. Stanford, PhD thesis, product already developed, ability to do what is being mentioned in the mission, and then you could build around it. Very often when we are at a stage of raising capital, we may or may not have a product under natural traction, and therefore I am a little hesitant in using something like this as a template. This is what Airbnb put in its document, and let us also understand that both the founders were just out of design school, obviously not from a business background, but it's a little long. Most tourists booking online care about price, and hotels are one of the highest costs when traveling. On the other hand, platforms like Couchsurfing have proven that over 500,000 people are willing to lend their couches or spare bedrooms. We've created a platform that connects travelers with locals, letting them rent our rooms or even entire places. Travelers pay money and locals can monetize their rooms, and we just take a 10% commission. Would you use this as your mission statement? Yeah, now I would like to get some feedback.
Do raise your hands if somebody wants to speak up.
Or even yes, no.
Rana says no. So when he says
So says
yes,
yes. Yeah.
looks like more people are saying no.
No. Yeah. So yes. So yeah, we can always turn around and say that yeah, these guys didn't know what to write as their vision or a mission. So what a vision or a mission statement has to do has to frame your entire pitch presentation. And when I say frame, at a physical sense, it's what you see on the screen. Its boundaries need to be defined so that the person who's wanting to consider investment by understanding your business can see the boundaries of your thinking and then see that everything in that statement, does it hang together? Framing is a very critical piece. So the solution of Airbnb is a web platform of renting space where you save money, make money, and share a culture. Its market validation is in just these two numbers, that Couchsurfing has this many number of people and Craigslist has this many listings. And the market size is what are the trips booked worldwide and what is the budget on these trips and what are the trips that they are targeting for their immediate market which they want to grab quickly. And this is their product. And this is if they make 10% commission on each transaction at this particular revenue per customer, this is their revenue. So what happened is that this framing of this longish statement is now framed the entire pitch presentation. It was a good thing that all of you said that this is not the right, or most of you felt that this may not be the right way to write your mission statement. It is long. What I'm going to suggest to you is also a mechanism of how to make that statement. But while making that statement, this particular comment of Airbnb, what you see on the screen, is actually the building block on which the entire pitch presentation's message got built. And I'm going to show it to you, really. So one thing about framing, how you initially introduce the boundaries of your business and what you intend to do is a very critical. Words make a huge difference. And I want you to look at the image on the left. So we use this slide pretty commonly when we want to understand cognitive bias. So carbon emissions have come down by 5%. One person says carbon emissions reduced by just 4.6% in 5 years, and nobody's interested because the number looks terrible. And on the other side, the same statement is thanks to our aggressive stance on climate change, and the government has reduced carbon emissions by almost 5%. It just changes the manner in which the listener listens to what you're talking about. This is the framing that you have to build in your mission statement or a vision statement when you're conceptualizing it. That how will this be perceived by the listener? Will it be seen as overkill or a very low bar to meet when the problem that you may be talking about would be too big? Dilbert is just an interlude just to show you how framing is attempted by different people. So we use this as our first working document, not necessarily the final statement, that my company's is our solution, and you're going to write what you are doing within the brackets for our target customers and users, and we help them solve this particular problem with these benefits. We are initially targeting our market we will make money with our business model, and we acquire customers through a strategy called this, and we have an advantage based on the team. We also have a technology advantage, and in order to demonstrate to you that what I'm talking about is going to work, I have a traction statement of customers. If you can make this slide in a language which is easily understood by somebody, you can then edit it to your mission statement. Because ultimately, in some shape or form, in language, you have to communicate the real elements of your entire business in a shorter way, but capture all of this. There may be situations where you don't have a technology advantage. You'll have to be if you're too early in the game, or you don't have technology as your core element, you may not have a technology advantage. But a technology also works in customer acquisition, so you'll have to bring something relating to that in the initial working draft. Team advantage is a core element. Acquisition of customers, I'm going to do in some detail, but it's the rate of growth of customers, how you make money, and your target market. You never target the entire market, like in the case of Airbnb. They said, this is the global market, but I'm only going to target something which is going to give me 200 million in a period of time that they wanted capital for. The main issue when you communicate this in a presentation is the concept of authenticity. Whatever you may write cannot be factual. If you believe that it is a problem that you personally care about, you have to illustrate what is wrong with it today. You cannot say my heart tells, or make people say that, I'm intensely passionate about drinking water. The statement has to be that so many people in the world don't have access to drinking water. And that authenticity and your personal involvement and commitment towards it on the first slide of your presentation is what becomes the hook. That maybe this entrepreneur is so committed and has done so much work to understand the problem that I need to pay attention to every little detail that he or she is going to be talking about. And then the problem statement must have two characteristics. Not only should the degree of pain or a problem be understood, but it must apply to a lot of people. What you are trying to do, your personal care demonstrate depth of understanding, the extent of pain and the number of people who have it implicitly demonstrates the bigness of the opportunity. And people have no interest in the product that you are going to make, the mechanics of how you're going to get there. They're more interested in your having to communicate what is the outcome going to be for the resolution of this pain to the lot of people that you are talking about. And just to give you an example, when Steve, and this is a video which you must look at, hasn't got too much of good sound, but you can Google on YouTube. When he launched the first iPhone, and the iPhone took 4 years to become ubiquitous in the world. Obviously the first product was nothing but an iPod clone and never sold too well, but yeah, it did sell. He didn't talk of the technology. He just said a touch screen was going to change your life, because everybody at that time was working with the BlackBerry, and obviously he had certain words to say about the problem with the BlackBerry. So he was talking about the pain as the BlackBerry and the outcome which he was going to create and the scale to which it was going to be. And that's the power of your statement. And in a summary form, the emphasis of the statement has to be you, because it's not a generic problem. It's not a generic statement. It's about you, the founder stroke co-founder. It's pain, the scale of people, the outcome. And I'm just throwing in this bit about innovation. Why do I bring in the concept of innovation? There's a strategy that I have used in most presentations I make, particularly when I'm trying to sell. Haven't made a pitch presentation for quite a while. That every slide should have a hook which makes the listener interested in what's coming next. If you look at the personal care, the pain, and the expected outcome, it is what you are intending to do. It's a very big thing to be hooked about. But if you underpin it with something like innovation, the fact that they are going to look for that innovation in the subsequent 10, 11, 12 slides, as it may be, and the question answer session, you have now made them more focused and attentive to what is coming next. This is another element of a presentation that you must build in on every slide, that there's a hook for the next frame that you're going to show them, as it were. You have to bear in mind that innovation, often in the case of startups who are starting out and may not be 2-3 years down the road, comes through granularity of implementation. And what I mean is, because when we execute, a lot of changes happen in our way of thinking. Changes happen in your products as you create them. Changes happen in the target markets. That the real innovation lies in the knowledge that you acquire and the micro changes that you make along the journey. And if you have already embarked on that journey, your ability to articulate that innovation as concrete and implicit in the product or the operations of the company, as it were, becomes very, very tangible. And I want to show you this slide to just talk about the way you need to speak about innovation. Now, some of us who are in retail or we are all customers, so we know what retail is, that here is a store of Aldo in Dubai, which has about 1,800 square feet. It has 900 different products on the shelves. And the way one browses it, by walking around. And on the top is an Amazon screen, which is 14 inches of a laptop size. So if it's an iPad or a phone, it's even smaller. But in its warehouse, it has millions of products. And the question is, how the hell does Amazon make product search efficient, better than the experience in a store where I have many more square feet of display space? And the innovation of Amazon is not e-commerce. E-commerce is certainly its innovation, but as it's gone along, its algorithms today say that if I have 5 million products in my warehouse, I have the technology to make the product search for customers. And the minute you have said, how the hell will a product search for a customer, it builds that innovation hook to the listener. And this is the manner in which you build hooks while you are presenting. And the first hook has to be in your mission, vision, sort of that most boring slide. You have to make it most creative and the best hook for going in. The second element, and I'm now going to get into the second piece of the puzzle. A value of a business is built upon rapid growth. It is built upon a go-to-market strategy, which has been discovered or is going to be discovered if it's an early stage startup. And then an understanding that I can now press the gas and scale up the business to give value to the investor. A go-to-market strategy has to have a foundation. And the strategy is not something you articulate, but you demonstrate the depth of that foundation. First and foremost, you may have stocked of a $10 billion opportunity globally, but now the time comes that you got to demonstrate the first niche market or the second niche market which you are going to tackle to demonstrate growth. The 10 billion market can be left on one side unless you're at a growth stage and now you're scaling up and you're looking for $300 million of capital to make it a $2-3 billion company. So it works at every stage, but I'm just sensitizing you to the fact that the focus of the go-to-market strategy has to be very, very sharp and vivid. And in my, my doctorate is in strategy. I've done a lot of strategy work, and I've always said strategy is a bad word. In the entrepreneurial world, there is no articulation of strategy. Strategy is executed in engagement with customers by understanding what to build, how to serve, and how much will the customer pay you. Even if you have proven your product at the first stage and you're looking for second stage of funding, you're getting into the new customer cohort or scaling a geography, issues come into play. And this is where the role of an entrepreneur engaging with their mind and hands in actual selling is a very critical signal to an investor that what this entrepreneur is talking about is real and tangible. And he's not going to say that I'm going to recruit a marketing whiz kid and he's going to do everything to do with customers. The idea of crafting a strategy with customers is a very, very implicit prerequisite in the entire 8, 9, 10 years of fundraising that an entrepreneur goes through after they take the first round of capital. And we've all heard Steve Jobs say that he didn't like market research, but actually he researched an engagement with customers. And one thing which you have to be wary of is to discuss your concept and your product and take feedback from your friends and family and their friends and family. Please understand that opinions don't matter except in a newspaper and social media. Everywhere else, if I'm willing to pay, then your opinion works. If you give me hard data, then I understand what you're talking about. And be extremely wary of disengaged market research using a platform like SurveyMonkey or the like and engaging with hundreds of customers. Yeah, so I've already said this, that execution determines the discovery of price. Price is never something you decide with an accountant on a piece of paper or an Excel. It is discovered through experimentation with customers. And each time you change your customer cohort, you have to go through that learning curve. And investors want founders who do personal sales early to discover answers. Now, what is this understanding of the customer that we talk about in the investment process? Any founder or co-founder who actually has understood what drives consumer choice behavior knows exactly how to influence it. And why we talk of consumer choice behavior is what I'm going to demonstrate to you. So we usually say, when we have an idea and we start building a product, we say we know what the market wants, then we discover it. This is your disruptive idea. But all these three interact when it comes to what the customer will pay. And often what the customer will pay takes us back to the drawing board to redo something in the product or otherwise. Your unique understanding is the biggest factor in understanding of growth. And therefore, this becomes a principal influence in an investor's understanding that if these guys know what is influencing choice behavior, these guys and are committing growth, then we know that growth will happen. And I have my own stupid 5 forces model for those MBAs who know what Porter's 5 forces is. When we start a new business, our objective is to do customer attraction and acquisition. But a customer may be already engaged and sticky with an existing consumer. He may be committed through price in the case of a SaaS product, or otherwise they may be using it and they have no need to change. And then at every moment when you present something and you trigger choice in a customer, he starts to look at competitive choices as well. And then in the case of products of the kind, digital products where you want to monetize later, you yet have to discover how this will become money. So you have to now influence a customer in this crazy scenario that once you attract and want to acquire him, he starts to evaluate multiple choices. And your offer has to be far greater than his current stickiness and commitment. And then he has to pay you a price that you want, and that deals with monetization. And what we have to do as entrepreneurs, how do I trigger the customer to even evaluate me? Can I create a motivation in the customer to, after the trigger is done, that please evaluate me, I'm worthy of evaluation. And then is the power of your ability that once the first 2 things have pried open a dialogue, can you then change them? Do they have the ability to change? And this is a concept which is pretty easy to understand, that if the customer has something which is very hard to do, they need a very high level of motivation to change. But if they have a low motivation to change and it's easy to do, they'll even do it at that time. So we always come up with a curve which says that motivation and ability of a customer to choose is going to go down a curve of this kind. And when you're talking about the product or the service, tech or physical or tangible, etc., you got to understand that when I'm meeting a customer, where are they? These are conceptual tools to make you think. This is not a graph that you actually make. And then what do you have to do? If this is where you are, then can I make my product simple? Can I make it easy to use? Can I make it cheaper? Is the physical effort to use it low? Is the amount of cognitive evaluation that a person has to do? So you now have to come up with strategies which simplify things if there is a low motivation for a person to start to evaluate your product. If it's a very complex product, then obviously until and unless there's a high level of motivation, it's not going to work. And once a person has a high level of motivation but has low ability, that's again a challenge. So you end up doing what we call create triggers for consumers to understand your message, spark that feeling that you need to evaluate it, and then see how to manage this. I have a SaaS platform, and it's very clear that when we first went into the market, we targeted 7 consumers, we converted 2, we actually pitched to 4, we converted 2. But let me tell you that the way we pitched it and the way they understood it from their perspective was very, very different. It was very clear that their motivation levels were high, and therefore, because it's a SaaS platform, if you make it easy to use, it gets easier and easier to get them accepted. But lo and behold, after the product got implemented, we found that a lot of new employees were taking a lot of time to get a feel and experience of the product. The less experienced people were not able to use it. And what we had to do then is to continue to simplify the product to make the product move in this direction. And it's exactly the same We are now launching a consumer version of it. And whatever is the experience of the earlier time, we are saying, can it be as simple to use as a posting on LinkedIn or a Facebook or a Medium, for the sake of argument? The simplicity issue, and I'm going to reinforce this in terms of what is consumer costs. And this is a simple concept, but if any one of you have the time, you can Google the gentleman called Neil Ayal. He talks of first look at a trigger, then give an action, but reward the action. And if the reward is fulfilling, the user is now going to come and ask for reusing the product. And he's talking of social media, but I could use this very easily in retail, because retail has a very interesting phenomena that you can today create communities of customers, and they behave very much like digital social platforms. But the fact that trigger and action and reward are very important. So I have a friend of mine who runs another platform, and they have an app, and everybody who's using that platform is reasonably high income, but all they had to do is to introduce Amazon vouchers of 100 and 200 dirhams for referring other friends. And you should just see how those consumers clamor because that reward has come in, that they really want to get more and more people onto the platform. So it kind of creates a viral effect. So this 4-quadrant phenomena of trigger, action, the reward, and then a bit of work to get them back to repeat the action ends up being pretty well used as a concept. Yeah, so I'm going to bring you to some mathematics, and you can hold me back if you have any doubts on what I'm talking about. So once we get into the customer growth phenomena, a most critical question for an investor is that what is the value that the customer is bringing to the business, and how much is the investment going to be in the cost of customer acquisition? So what we do here is that we just put the number of customers, and I talk of the word retention, and I'll come back to it, but retention is the number of customers that I acquire and retain, not the number of customers that I acquire and who churn away. What is the average order value? How frequently do they buy from me? And what is the margin that I make? So I do consulting for a digital transformation of a retailer. So in our cohort of 1.2 million customers, 15% customers buy 4.8 times every year. So that's my frequency. My average transaction value is 180 dirhams each time. I have my number, 15% of that 1.2 mil. The margin that I make on every transaction is 55. So this is the money that I make. And what I then turn around and say is that if I acquire this customer by spending $1,000, but because he's come again and again and again, the cost of customer acquisition for a customer that I retain is going to give me that much value. What then happens is that an investor says that if this business can retain 15% of the customers and they are buying 5 times every year, let me give him money to invest $100 to get a customer, because that 100 is now becoming 180 multiplied by 5, which is the frequency, multiplied by 55. And therefore, the return that I'm getting in 1 year is far greater than the $100 cost of acquisition. If in the old school of business, I had said I'm going to spend $100 on marketing for a $180 invoice value, the person would have shut the business or the employee would have got sacked. The metrics of how customer acquisition and growth happens today has dramatically changed. And our understanding of a customer today is that the customer is an annuity. customer is not a transaction. It is the frequency and the repetitive purchase that I can get from a customer as opposed to a single transaction. And now you connect this to the original question. Do a lot of people have the problem? What happens is that the rate of growth, if it's going to be measured by the customers, the order value, the frequency, and the margin, then all of a sudden, the original question of the size of the people who have the problem that I'm trying to solve in the startup, is it a good problem? Is that problem going to grow at a rate becomes an important question to be managed. The urgency, if the problem is so good, people want it fixed ASAP, urgency clicks in, and the price that I've discovered in the market now tells me about the willingness to pay, and the frequency at which it will be encountered determines the manner in which the value will be created in the business. So the dots are starting to connect with the size and growth and the metric. In order to do this well, you have to understand what is the consumer cost and what is the understanding of customer value. And this is again a dichotomy. When we talk, all of you have seen a profit and loss account. It's the most important thing in a business, which the CFOs keep throwing in every meeting. Pardon any CFOs in the conference call. But customer profit is very different from this crazy thing, because the accounting profit only happens after the acquisition and transaction. And what we are interested in is in entrepreneurs happens far before the acquisition and transaction has occurred. I'm in the business of acquisition for growth. The balance sheet, the numbers can take care of themselves at the right time. So for me, go to market is about customer acquisition. How do I evoke awareness, consideration, conversion, loyalty, and advocacy? Please understand these used to be crazy stuff in the Kotler's book, but have become extremely important to startups in the world of digital customer acquisition. So let's look at a customer pitch experience. I make a presentation to a customer, and this is what we do traditionally in marketing. You evaluate it, you choose it, you purchase it, and you consume it. But the challenge arises that whatever pitch I make, the customer has to spend time in understanding, paying attention to me and understanding it. Information now has to be accessible to the customer at any moment of time. And then they have to process the information and take a decision. And therefore, the customer cost today is time to do this, accessing the information, the physical and the cognitive effort that they have to undertake, and then the actual transaction and experience. And the game is of milliseconds. All of us are digital natives. When you are scrolling on Instagram, you scroll seriously on milliseconds. When you look at an Amazon site, it's milliseconds. When you look at the news, it's the headline. When it's WhatsApp, it's just a few words. And it's Twitter, it's 140 or 280 characters. The game of attention and understanding is of milliseconds. It's no longer the old marketing methodology that I'm going to shoot at everybody and somebody will get the message. And when we launched the product, this is my product. When we launched the product, we wanted to do a B2C platform. Very quickly, we discovered that government approvals would take too long, and we converted the platform into a B2B platform for angel networks and incubation platforms. Incubation, we cracked very quickly. Once we cracked the angel network very quickly, got 4 clients. When we started working with them, we suddenly discovered that 10 of the problems that they had used to buy from me, they had no interest in solving. But the 2 that they wanted to solve were actually influencing 100% of the purchase acquisition behavior. And therefore, if I had not wasted my time in Doing this, my time would have been saved, my ability to give message would have been saved, their effort would have been saved, and maybe my transaction effort would have been much faster. And this happens in every platform. You take a customer journey of banking. There was a time when branches were important. You had to physically go to a branch. It's now a process of minutes. And each one of us who may have 2, 3 banking engagements or a couple of credit card engagements, you can seriously see which app is consumer friendly, which is not. And therefore, in this game of milliseconds, monetary costs, what a customer pays, the time value which he assigns implicitly, and the effort value which he or she assigns implicitly are the real costs of customer which I solve. And what we do is that all this translates to money. And therefore, today when I do business, I actually keep the accounting profit and loss account out of keep it aside. I have no interest in any Excel sheet work done by anybody on forecasting things. We'll come to it later. But I actually look at a consumer profit and loss account. And this is where I focus on, is language understanding good enough that without scrolling, they'll get what I'm talking about? And then we work on the time it takes, the effort, the search, and then we work to eliminate the costs of the consumer. And at every stage, I have to ask this question, is there too much variety? Is there too many places that they access the product at differential pricing? Is there a purchase process which can be made easy? Is the receipt of goods different? I mean, all of us who buy on the internet will know which brand is giving you great service, great packaging, great messaging, great return experience. And all these are implicit costs of a customer. And what we try to do in the customer acquisition space is focus on all this. And remember, each of these steps is measurable, can be experimented with digital platforms, in direct engagement with customers, and that builds the power of your presentation. If this is the strategy, this is the understanding of how you wish to grow your business. And last but not the least, we have to understand that no longer do you sell to customers. Customers influence each other far more than the marketing messages of a company. And what we are now saying is that it is the community which is a customer as opposed to an individual. And we have to do engagement with the community. Annuities, they give you a return very, very frequently. And therefore, the network is the customer, and this is the way we thrive. And these 2 books, if any one of you like to read, are very, very relevant books. The one on the left came 8 years ago, but is still current. And then how to look on customers as investments, as customers as transactions. Because the value of a business is essentially the value of the customer. Platform for consumers, very much inspired by the particular app that you see. Unfortunately, Victoria's Secret is a brand which is in some sort of trouble, but Pink is their brand. 5.5 years, so not now, so it will be about 11 years ago since I stopped engaging with them. They created this app. They gave it to 660 girls in 30 colleges. How the metric came up that way, but that's how it did. On this app, every product that they used to create was sent to the 660 girls, and they participated in the creation of the product, whether it was color, it was design, it was fit, or whatever. You can imagine that when the goods reached the store, and these girls got a message that you participated in the creation of this product with me, This is the offer for you because you are a co-creator of this project. And then you can give a $10 gift card to any of your friends. Everybody on the group, the contact tab of these 660 girls got a message from the girl about this particular product which she had co-created. And you can just multiply the math on how communities and engagement can become more relevant. So I today always say that in the B2C businesses, the word loyalty is a bad word. Engagement. I may be only the buyer of a product at one time. I don't want to be considered a non-loyal customer. It is the duty on a digital world where the cost of engagement is zero for every company to connect with me and dialogue with me. And this is where marketing is shifted to the approach of communities. And the fact that when you create a community, you can really make your customer an investment. And that's the power that you need to bring to your presentation. And this is why I'm talking about this so in such a focused manner. We all know that the logic of viral effects is a very critical element in a growth business. And we know that existing users bring more users for free. And traditionally, everybody says create a digital platform like Facebook, which can then become viral. I belong to a category of thinkers that it is far easier to craft a viral effect on products which exist than to build technology products with network effects. Because the logic of creating communities is now accessible to anybody. As long as you don't create a community on Facebook, because Facebook has a problem, you invest money in creating the community, and then when you need to market to the community that you have created, you again pay Facebook. So Facebook has this crazy financial model where you do the heavy lifting, and you have to pay for it when you want to use what you have created. And this is what an investor wants to see when they see your growth story. What they want to see is that do you know how to create leads? Do you know how to convert them into customers? And then do you know how to grow your customers? If you can answer this, they probably have a business in which they seriously want to believe that the growth will be achieved. And I always use this thing to show that when we talk of what you do in marketing expenditure, and this is the sales that you get, what the digital capability allows you to do is to understand what is actually driving that customer acquisition. And this is where the presentation on growth needs to bring that you know how leads are generated and you have measures of that. You know how conversion happens and you know the cost of it. And then you know these are the customers retained and you know the value of that customer. And no more theory is required to be presented when you can conceptualize your growth story around your customer acquisition piece and the value of a customer. And so this is how people present. They talk of how you get leads. It could come from paid, it could come from organic, whatever. What is the effort you make in awareness and education? What is the selection and onboarding that happens? What is the impact? And I'm going to talk of these monthly revenue things when we talk of financial fluency. And then we talk of growth. And this basic model is your power for convincing somebody that you know the business you are intending to seek an investment for. And then we get into the financial fluency piece. So I'm assuming quite a few of you understand the concept of valley of death. So this is a concept we use in the startup business, that when you have an idea, you go to invest money. So you're consuming cash, and then you're going to do the feasibility with an MVP, and you're going to still consume cash. You're getting staff in, so it's negative cash flow. And then you launch the product. And if at a certain stage after launching the product, it's going to take a lot of time for you to refine the product, then this curve is going to get much longer. You're going to require much more cash. And if you're taking external capital, this deep valley and the need of cash will squeeze you to shut the startup. And it's very, very important that the cash that you take and the manner in which you invigorate growth at the bottom is a determinant of success and growth. And why I'm doing this is to identify the metrics that you need to manage the value of death. Every business goes through this. So death may be a negative word, but it kind of is what is true. And there are three things which you have to balance. So on one side, the investor who invests is asking you to acquire customers, and you have to acquire customers at a margin to make this valley come up, and you need cash. And at every moment of time, the pressure of the investor to grow, and your product may not be that ready for growth, your pricing may still not be discovered, and there may not be enough cash in the bank. The balancing is critical because a lot of startups crash because the entrepreneur starts to do what investors are telling him or her to do, and that may not be what the business requires or what the heart of the entrepreneur wants. And then we try to grow too fast by reducing price, and we are left with no cash. We have good customer acquisition numbers, but nobody is going to give you cash at a lower margin. And this balancing phenomena is the real key to financial fluency. Simple mathematics of business. If I have priced a soap at 100, it can't be $100, at $3, and its price remains steady as a soap. But in my factory, as I acquire more and more customers, my cost starts to come down, and then it starts to rise. So we call this the margin revenue curve, that every incremental piece sold, I earn the same amount of money. But my cost curve for a tangible product comes down and goes up. In the case of a digital product, once you have made a platform and people have started to use it, the digital cost of goods keeps coming down as you get more and more customers. So that's why a cost of customer acquisition through a paid click on Google can be negligible, but there will be so many clicks that, and the word unit economics is often referred to as the revenue, say $100 you sell something for, and the percentage of the various costs till you get a margin. Let me tell you, in the startup language, this is the most terrible way of talking about unit economics as to what is the cost, because the investor is more interested in knowing what is your cost curve as you grow your business, as you build your enterprise. I have no interest in knowing what is your percentage cost breakup today. And this is why the question that an investor wants to know, that at which stage of this journey will your cost curve start to decline? Now imagine that my cost has declined. It is at that stage I can rapidly accelerate growth. And therefore the interest of an investor and an interest of an entrepreneur even before the investor is the second level of analysis. What is my marginal decrease in cost curve? And what we do this is that we have something called a margin revenue formula. So you are assumed reviewing your business month to month or quarter to quarter. What you have to see is that in the last quarter that I'm evaluating, what was my incremental revenue and what was my incremental change in quantity which gave me that revenue. That is the marginal revenue, the incremental revenue I earned by selling an additional unit. And similarly, you have to answer a question to yourself in order to assess whether the cost curve is declining. What was my change in total cost in the last quarter, beginning to end? And what was the incremental quantity that I produced? That tells you, is my cost curve declining and is my marginal revenue curve increasing or steady? If it is steady, it's good. If it's declining, you're discounting your product to get quantity and it may hurt you. If you are increasing price and the quantity remains the same, then you are in a good place because the customer is prepared to pay you money. And this is the interpretation of unit economics. What is the incremental revenue that I am getting for an additional quantity sold quarter by quarter, and incremental cost to then determine, am I discounting to get a customer? Will the margin hurt me? Is the cost decline a good decline? Can I now talk of price discount to get a new cohort? So my margin will remain the same. This is how you manage this particular term called unit cost in a startup. I'm also going to caution all entrepreneurs who may be thinking that I have no interest in learning rudiments of finance. If ever you tell an investor that you are an entrepreneur who cares two hoots for numbers because you're going to get a CFO who's going to look at all this, please understand you're not an entrepreneur worthy of taking capital. Why? Understanding sales minus cost is mathematics, it's not finance. Understanding margin and understanding cash is not finance. It's how every mother who's running a household runs the household. And the sales numbers during your growth phase and startup phase, once revenue has begun, it's far easier for you to manage what is the monthly recurring revenue. This is the revenue that you get every month and is predictable. And that revenue is your more stable resource to say that with this stable resource, I can now take many more decisions to grow rapidly. And annual recurring revenue is a term which is again used, which is just monthly recurring revenue by 12. And I want you to look at the left. An investor always looks at monthly revenue, recurring revenue growth, because when they give you 24 months of capital, expecting growth, they are interested in seeing, is the monthly revenue recurring growth rate increasing? Because if it starts to decline, then you know there is some issue which is happening. Investment is not yielding results. And then you turn around and you need to look at it. And this is directly connected to the curve, the value of debt, because once you have crossed the angel investment mark, where once you've taken your first check and started to build and got product market fit, and you got to now know for external second and third stage round of capital before a Series A, you have to demonstrate that all this that you are managing through a growth of monthly recurring revenue is a demonstration of efficient use of capital, which you had taken in the previous round. And any investor funds you only on the basis of that efficiency, the prudence or sensibility of using capital raised. And the metrics that are measured in financial fluency, or till now, is the ability of customer acquisition, the ability of a user engagement and retention, the loyalty and engagement that I talked about, the power to evoke a user to pay. How do you discover price? By changing price and testing whether customers leave or come, or the retention and acquisition rate changes. If a customer wants to leave, do you have a capacity to prevent that exit, or all of a sudden another substitute product has started to come in the market, which is serving or solving the same need? And then, do you have the ability to cross-sell and upsell and get more money from the consumers? If you can capture this thinking through this language-based questioning within the team, With some metrics thrown in, you are there to tell somebody, listen, I know how to use money, I know how to grow, I know the size of the market, and I'll give you what you're looking for. You don't have to say it this way, but it's implicit and implied. And what is the monetization metric? Is the revenue per user increasing without any effort? So people are interested in buying the product more frequently. Can you now charge a premium and not lose customers and not lose acquisition? Has the product got so embedded in user psyche, the inability of any message platform to take away users from WhatsApp? You're just embedded in the psyche. Or in the case of SaaS businesses, we always say the organization process now has it embedded and we can stop searching for alternatives. Is the product differentiated in the eyes of the customers? This is your ability to influence and attract them. And if you are having a digital platform, how frequently do people come and search for it? Or how frequently do people come and use it if it's a usage-based platform? So every time when we do paid marketing, the only metric I measure is organic to paid ratio. Is it skewed in favor of organic? Then paid customer acquisition is kind of okay. But if there's only paid customer acquisition, it's never going to work out unless a customer stays with me for 2 years and buy five or 10 times a year. And does the customer have a natural attraction? And what this does is reduces the cost of marketing. So word of mouth or through viral effects. And if the acquisition cost is declining, then you certainly have a right on the next round of capital, or even on the first round of capital, if this is what you are seeking after you have these numbers. So where does this all add up? We always say that investment is essentially who, what, where, and how. And this is a game of who. So founder gets the maximum weightage in any early stage evaluation. Does he know enough about the market? Does he come with past experience? Is the founding team capable and competent to manage the perils of entrepreneurship, as it were? What's the size of the prize that they are interested in? Is it a significant problem? Is it a top 3 needs or wish list of customers? Does the product or category have strength? Is it such an important? So if you're doing CRM for the sake of argument, Zoho does a CRM, Salesforce does a CRM, but Salesforce now takes the category of CRM and then puts e-commerce on top of it and all that kind of stuff. Is the go-to-market strategy capital intensive? The how? Is the journey risky? Will they be able to execute? Will they create data in the startup? And can the company develop a sticky relationship with the customers? And does this endure a long-term advantage to the startup that we are talking about? So basically, while you're doing the pitch, the mathematical brain of an investor is hovering around these questions, because when you finish, and if they're using, if there are 4 or 5 angel investors sitting in a pitch presentation, and they have to collectively decide, they have something called a rubric. The rubric basically is what you're seeing in front of you.
Dr. Manoj.
And the way to make your presentation is pretty simple. This is
your heads up on the time.
Playbook table that I've created, which is available to you when we share this pitch. So the slide that you're making, you number it, you put the title here, and then put your ideas as to how the ideas will make meaning for the investors. Then you decide on the text that you will put on the slide, which they will read. And then ask yourself, does the text have a hook, an idea, or a number that the reader will remember? If not, rework the test. And what you then do is that you're now looking at it from an investor's point of view, and on every slide, you're creating a hook or the jigsaw puzzle piece that's going to take the entire presentation through, and at the end, they'll be able to visualize it the way you want it to. But just putting answers to the questions in a traditional manner often is a terrible process. I have hundreds of actual pitch presentations made in angel networks, and I can't obviously share them from an NDA point of view, and I couldn't even take screenshots because the names of the companies were there. But out of, say, I look at about 15 pitches every month. On all Saturdays, we have 2 pitch days for 2 angel networks that I'm a member of. And roughly out of the number that come in, 1 or 2 will go for what is called an investment decision making. Some bad networks take a larger percentage, but the ones that I'm a member of are pretty restrictive. But it's easy to make out that the slides are making meaning for the investors. And then how to pitch. So I've given you that I said it's just a given IPO document to the Bombay, to SEBI in India for an IPO. The first paragraph of that IPO document is what I've reproduced. We have a history of net losses, and we anticipate increased expenses in the future. We expect our costs to increase over time, and our losses will continue given significant investments expected towards growing our business. 15 years old company, by the way. We have expended and continue to expend substantial capital and other resources on marketing to attract customers and developing our platform, all that stuff which merchant bankers write. These efforts may be more costly than we expect and may not result in increased revenue or growth in our business. Any failure to do this could prevent us from maintaining or increasing profitability or cash flow in the future. So I'd asked a question that how many of you would make this as your pitch presentation to the TiE network? I doubt whether any one of you would do it, but there may be certain investment forums which turn around and see the history of this company over 15 years. It's in 34 countries, and it has a certain growth rate, and there's a pandemic sentiment that deliveries are the future. So maybe there'll be enough number of people who will give them capital. But one of the major founders is extinguishing their shares in this IPO.
Manoj,
There's a $15 billion company in the US called Wayfair. And I dug out their IPO document, which was done in 2005. And they're also trying to say the same thing, but this comes towards the, so every IPO document has a red flag area where you're supposed to tell the buyer beware. We are selling you a share, but we may not be able to deliver what we are promising because of any reason. So what they start their presentation with is that we believe that our continued growth will depend on our ability to. They make a laundry list of the company's abilities that have been created. So they're very clear that this is what we do. Our past demonstrates that this works. And then they turn around and say that we cannot assure you that we will be able to achieve the commitments that we are giving. If we have a failure to grow at the rates that we are talking about, and then our operating results will be impacted. But to manage our growth effectively, we must continue to implement our operational plans and strategies. So here was a company which saying, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm going to make losses. So buyer beware, invest. It's the first paragraph of the IPO document. This is the cautionary section of the IPO document, which says, this is our strategy. If you believe in my strategy, but God forbid something doesn't happen, I may not achieve the goal. But to manage my growth, I must continue to implement what has worked. And this is what an entrepreneur has to believe, that how you come and present and the language that you use frames and determines the rest of the understanding of the investors. So this is the end of my presentation. I'm sorry, I've taken, I think, much longer than
Yeah, I was just going to say, Manoj,
promised.
we're running out of time. I just want to be mindful.
And
We can
yeah,
just quickly just to
so just to end, and any questions, I'll
yeah,
love to answer.
there are I want to just go through at least one or two questions. We do have a lot of them staying back as well, even though we've run over time.
Cicely, I'm sorry I've taken too long.
That's fine. We have people staying,
Nobody's there?
so that's a good sign. Okay, so I'm just going to take two questions because we really run out of time, and there
Yeah,
are
yeah.
a few people staying. So, how important is vision and mission statement? Do we need to frame it at the early stage? Which comes at the top, vision or mission? Which is fixed for the life of the firm? Which can it get changed over a period of time?
Yeah, so this is Arun, right? Yeah.
Correct, Arun.
So, Arun, the statement is important both for investors, for yourself, the employees that you will recruit, and the customers. These things change over time. They don't have to be framed and cast in stone. I usually prefer to work on this after the presentation is done. I don't build this and then build the presentation. Yeah, I should have
Yeah.
answered that. Okay.
There are many business plans online. Some investors ask for a specific format. What would be a better format for writing? Is there some?
So if what I have found is most pitch presentations asked by investors follow a very similar format. But if an investor is telling you do it on my format, it's better to do it on their format. But any format that you get will not have tables and graphs that fill this graph and fill that. That probably doesn't work.
Okay. Let's make this the last question. I have actually built my sports SaaS platform. This is Nikita. She's been, uh, I have received around 5,000 plus views. I have worked on the product pricing too. Should I go in for an angel investor at this stage?
A very difficult question to answer till I know more facts on
Yeah.
how you want to take your business. So it's, but before raising external capital, you must do a self-analysis to figure out whether uh, you uh, you are ready for external capital and the responsibility which comes with it.
Okay. What's the lowest number to start analysis on data? This is the last question. And if you have any requests, please write to TiE Dubai at tiedubai.org. And I also want to mention for the TiE women applicants, uh, Anastasia, do you want to come on board and just say a few things? Because we do know that this program is actually being done for all the interested applicants for TiE women. We just want to make sure you have the right elements and things in place while you apply. So do go to our webpage, tiedubai.org. Yeah, it's just been posted on the chat button. So if you register your interest over there, we will get back to you. We will be doing one-to-one clinics where you can actually talk one-to-one with an expert, and other workshops running through the full next 2-3 months where we will be taking in applications as well. So the final is actually going to be in October, where you have the opportunity to, the winner will get a final prize of $100,000, which is the global finals. The MENA will happen earlier than that, and one winner from there will go to the global finals. It's a great opportunity. It's second year in running. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things you will connect for. So on that note, thank you, Manoj, for the very engaging. It was very intense. I was listening as long as it was, and I think a lot of people are still staying back, which is really a good sign
Thanks.
for a long session. We usually do it 1 hour, but we knew there's so much to be done. So do write to TiE Dubai, tiedubai.org, and if there's anything, please ask.
Yeah, yeah. If, so a couple of questions are there which I can answer on a mail or something.
Yeah, so anything specific, I can direct you to Dr. Manoj as well. He's fantastic. And thank you, Anastasia. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening. Ramadan Kareem.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Manoj. That was fantastic.
Bye.
Thank you for all the tips.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.